Hi, and welcome to another edition of On the Books, originating right here at the Bowie Media Studios in Bowie, Maryland. Today, we're back with another published author. We have with us Pamela Hart Vines, who has written a book called Born to Sin, or Born of Sin. Oh my gosh. Pamela, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Norm.
It's been my pleasure. Just a little disclaimer, Pam and I have known each other for a few years now because Pam is the director of a meetup for writers. Could you tell us a little, and I'm a member, could you tell us a little about that?
Yes, about 5 years ago, I started a platform for writers, a writers group called the Mitchellville Bowie Meetup Writers Group. And it's a platform that I started to have local writers come in and sit together to review each other's work. And I wanted to do this solely because I couldn't find any group that was local. I wanted to get my own writing looked at and just meet with other writers. So I went to Washington, D.C. and Virginia, but they were way too far, and I wanted something local. So I thought, why not start my own?
So you live right here in PG County.
I do. I've lived in Prince George's since 2010, and I currently live in Upper Marlboro with my husband.
Okay, and your group, did it prosper? Is it large?
Oh, absolutely. The group started off small, as with anything. We just had 3 members for a good number of months. But then once word of mouth kicked in and people started to join, I think right now we have upwards of 180 members on the meetup group.
And where do you meet?
Well, we had to look for somewhere that's publicly available and free, locally accessible. So we actually picked the cafe inside the Woodmore Wegmans Town Center Cafe.
See.
So we meet there approximately every 2 weeks or so, and we have about 10 to 12 people show up on a normal meetup occasion. Even though there are 180 some members, we have a smaller group of active participants who we see on a regular basis.
And so how do you contact them all?
Well, they do it through the meetup platform. Okay. And otherwise, once you decide that you want to be a regular, an active participant, then we have an internal email list where we send to everyone, and just overall, the format of the group is people come in and we volunteer. So we have 3 people volunteer to submit something that they've written to the group, and the group then critiques that work at the next meeting.
And this is all done electronically?
We send everything out electronically, people read them, and then come into the group, sit amongst each other and discuss it. So it's truly a wonderful platform to get insight into what you're writing.
And now you're a published author. Are other members of the group finding their way to publish?
Absolutely. This has been such a rich ground full of information and availability for authors to come and talk. So initially when I first started, none of us had been published. None of the people who were coming were published authors. But as of now, I would say at least 10 of the people have published books already. So it's just a rich environment.
And so what's your background?
Well, my background is I hail from the Pittsburgh area, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I graduated from the University of Pittsburgh with a degree in English and communications. Okay. But right after that, I was also in the ROTC program. So I went off and joined the military, became a colonel. I became a lieutenant. I joined the Army as a second lieutenant.
So you were in the Army?
Yes, I was in the Army, and I had an Army career going all over the country and so forth in the world for the past 20 years. So,
okay, did you meet anyone special in the Army?
Lots of people. This is way back when. General Powell, I think he stands out the most. General Schwarzkopf, so way back in that era.
Sherman.
My husband, Actually, I did not know my husband while I was in the military. So
Oh,
that came out
really?
good, not at all. So we saw each other from afar, but our relationship didn't get started until we were both retired and both here planted in Prince George's County.
Oh, that's
So,
a great story.
yes.
And you were an English major.
I did. I studied English, and even while I was in the military, I started to specialize in the public relations career field. So I was
Okay.
always involved with some kind of writing, some kind of words. I am a word person.
So when did you start writing?
I've always been writing. I wrote probably what all young girls do. You write stories, and I wrote a few poems, but nothing very serious. I wrote professionally in the military, writing press releases throughout my public relations career, but nothing ever of volume. A few stories in college, of course, but I didn't get started on my book until, well, the idea came to me for Born of Sin in college. And it's an interesting story how that inspiration came
share.
about. I was listening to my mother. My mother was telling me about my hometown news, because hometown gossip is always interesting. So she said that our local church, and there are a lot of churches in my hometown, but the church that we belong to got a new minister, a new pastor came to town. However, he was starting to do some unsavory type things. And the local congregation, the church leadership didn't approve of the things he was doing in the congregation and wanted to oust him. He didn't appreciate that and
Oh, I'm sure.
refused to leave. So one night he broke in, not allegedly, he actually got charged, and he broke into the church, ripped up the Bible, broke all the stained glass windows, and I was just appalled at that. And I thought to myself, what kind of background, what kind of upbringing must this person have had to have done such a thing, being a man of the cloth, allegedly? So with that thought in mind, that planted the seed for my character in my book, Born of Sin.
So this book originated when you were in college.
The thought of it, the inspiration came to me in college, yes, and it has absolutely nothing to do with that particular minister, but just that one seed. What happens if a person does such a thing? What kind of upbringing must they have? So then I went on to write.
So what kept that with you all that time?
It did. I did start to write probably 30 years ago. 1989, I actually put pen to paper and started to write some ideas, but I didn't fully finish it. I wrote a few chapters, put it down, and throughout the whole military career,
Tell us some more about your process.
the whole military career, I just wrote a little bit. So that didn't pick up. But I think actually for this book, I started all over again in 2009. And
That's
still,
right. I remember I came to the writing group
Yes.
about that.
I still just didn't really get going. But my process has changed dramatically from the first book all the way to what I'm currently doing now. So I think that there are two concepts for writing. You either are a plotter or you're a pantster. And that means
Pantster.
it's like flying by the seat of your pants
Oh,
when you write.
okay. That's
What?
sort of like me.
Or you actually have an idea, an outline that you start to write with and you stick to it. So for the first book, I was purely a pantster. I had no concept of what the end would be. I just had these characters in mind, and I just fell in love with them along the way and just kept writing. And eventually, by the grace of God, I finished the book. But now that that one is complete, I have completely done a 180-degree turn, and I became almost a plotter. And not to any serious degree, just that I do have an outline now, a very, very sketchy outline. So I may have one line, one bullet that may lead to a whole chapter. But yet I still have a sketchy roadmap that helps me write every day.
And so you do write every day now.
I absolutely do. I write, my goal is to write 2,000 words per day. And I don't give myself a time limit, but Sometimes I reach it, sometimes I go over, but that's my daily goal when I get up and sit at my computer at 7 a.m. to finish my 2,000 words. And I was inspired to do this by reading.
That's 20,000 words a month.
A
week?
Yes.
A week?
And it's enabling me.
No, I'm sorry, 14,000 words.
Yeah, I'm a word person, not a numbers person.
Okay, but still, that's a lot of words.
It is, and it's getting me to the point where I'm nearly finished with the first draft of my sequel called Born by Fire. So I'm really excited about that. But the turnaround came to me just this year in 2016 when I read 2 books. The first one was called Daily Rituals: How Artists Work. And the second one was Stephen King's memoir on writing.
What a
the classic.
Wonderful,
right.
Wonderful book.
So it's reading those 2 books in tandem that turned me around, and I truly wanted to emulate all the great artists that the first book talks about. I wanted to emulate that, and especially because Stephen King's career is so enviable, I want that. So that's where I got the 2,000 word goal from the master Stephen King.
Stephen King is one of my favorite authors.
Absolutely.
He was a high school English teacher, but it wasn't leaving him enough time to write. So he quit his English teacher's job and became the school janitor.
Yes.
So he wouldn't have to prepare lessons and would have more time to write. So hour-wise, 2 hours, 3 hours a day?
Well, I don't give myself a limit. I know there are some greats out there. I read one of the stories in the Daily Rituals book says that a man would give himself 15 minutes to produce 250 words. But, I am a slow writer. And because I've already committed to write every day and do my 2,000 words, I don't put that extra pressure on myself to finish at a certain time. But sometimes I finish in 3 hours. Sometimes it takes me 6 hours.
Right, we talk about this a lot in the writing group, but let's get back to Born of Sin. What's the story? The basic story, without spoiling the ending for our readers.
The story is of a young man who is forced from home and finds himself in the streets. He rises to power and then takes his drug money and buys himself a church. And that's it in a nutshell.
I was thinking of this book on Monday night when I was watching, I don't know if you watch Major Crimes.
I haven't.
Well, this particular episode of Major Crimes, that's exactly what 2 brothers, and one of them decided to leave the drug business and buy a church.
Amazing.
And it was the one brother went on the straight path. Now, Jacob was his name, right?
Yes, Jacob is my protagonist in the book. And he's a young man. And the story takes place actually on 2 parallel fields. It alternates between 1976, when Jacob is 12 years old, in the fictional town of Edgeboro, North Carolina, which ideally is close to Greensboro, North Carolina, just for proximity. And it also flips ahead to Pittsburgh, 1980, where he's on his own. So you get the 2 stories. 1976, where it's essentially his parents' story, his mother's, and how he grew up, and then 1980 when he's on his own.
And how he was conceived?
Yes, and hence the title of the book. He has a very tumultuous relationship with his stepfather because his mother conceived him out of wedlock with another person.
So it was the typical story of somebody, I don't want to say takes advantage, but that's the only word I can think of right now. But someone has a relationship with a person and then skips town and leaves her holding the pot.
Yes, in a nutshell. But there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot more, depth to why she's left alone with this pregnancy. But she marries a man, And he promises to love and care for her and love her child as well, but he doesn't. So he does not like his stepson. He tells him constantly that he's nothing but born of sin. And
Do they have other children?
They do. They go on to have 4 other children, a big family of 5. But he's literally the black sheep of the family because he's so different than the other children. And he's smart, he's charismatic, but he looks just like the man who left town. And it's...
And if I remember, the stepfather decides to hide him.
He does. And
I love
yes.
this. Please tell us about this.
A lot goes on. I don't want to spoil it. No spoilers, but it's no secret that he does leave town because the father kidnaps him, pretty much hogties him, kidnaps him, and drives him up north to Pennsylvania and puts him in his boarding school, where the boarding school is tucked away in the hills of Pennsylvania, which is another fictional town, pretty much Erie, Pennsylvania. And
where they make GE locomotives.
And he is in school there, and unbeknownst to his parents, and his mother doesn't know where he is, but he just wanted to get rid of the boy, get him out of his hair, and that's how the character Jacob ends up in Pittsburgh.
One of the things that when I was, the Born of Sin can be acquired at Amazon. And I recommend you go and take a peek at it. But one of the things that interested me on the Amazon trailer, whatever, the information about the book, it's portrayed in a genre of African American fiction.
It is. I am an African American woman, and I write about African American people. Essentially. Mm-hmm. So in this story, even though the family is African American, I truly don't want that to pigeonhole or to categorize any readers. Yes, I had to put it in a category because Amazon requires that you pick 3 categories. So it's an African American category. It's also in historical fiction because of its timeline for when the setting is set. And I have it in women's contemporary fiction.
Really? Oh, because of the mother.
True. So, it's African American fiction, but yet I still wrote it based on themes. I think the themes of betrayal and unrequited love and redemption ring throughout any humanity. Right. So it's a humanity type of story that transcends. So it's not just African American people.
I remember in reading drafts, I liked the natural father. He struck me as being very interesting.
He is.
But anyway, I don't want to. But it took 20 years?
It only took that long because of my non-commitment to write. But now I say to myself after I've published, because the book is published in December.
That's right, you got the camel off your back.
And it's off my back, and now I am a writer. Pamela Hart-Vines, I'm a writer. So I'm proud to say that. And in proclaiming myself a writer, I truly have made the commitment to sit down every day and write. And if anyone out there is thinking of a career as a writer, that's step number 1, to sit down, put in the legwork, bring yourself to the party and write.
That brings us back to process. Do you write at the same time every day?
I do, and I wanted to pattern a lot of what the greats do. And in the book, there were 3 things that every great writer does. Essentially, they write in the morning, and I write in the morning. I write at 7. They also take walks every day, as does Stephen King. I do my 3 to 4 miles every day, and that brings on a lot of the inspiration too, so that's good for me. And also, writers read. And I've started to read
without any question.
A lot more. As a child, I was never without a book. Everything I've ever learned worthwhile has been from a book. And I let go of that throughout the years, but now I'm reclaiming my love for reading, which is essential. If you are a writer, writers write, writers read.
That's exactly right. Stephen King
Exactly.
talks about that a
Yes.
lot. Stephen King also talks about a big change in his life when he got ran over by the van walking the dog.
Yes,
When he stopped,
yes, I hadn't known that until I read the memoir.
he stopped with the white powder. He stopped with the alcohol.
That's another thing that a lot of writers have in common, present company accepted, that I do not espouse any excessive drink or powder. I don't do any of that. I'm a natural girl. But I know a lot of writers, but he did come
He
to
talks
his
a lot
own.
about that in
And
that
after the
memoir.
accident and almost losing his life, he let all of those bad habits go.
And he has that book he wrote about it, Misery.
Yes.
Yes. I love Stephen King. In fact, I have to say this. I think his novel, It, is the best coming-of-age story written, I say ever. I say ever.
It's a good
Although
one.
I really do like Holden Caulfield a lot too, but and Bigger
Yes.
from Native Son is another one of my all-time favorites, and I've always felt like the Invisible Man, but we won't go there.
Yes.
This is about Born of Sin
Yes.
and Pamela Hart Vines. So, why write to the sequel
Well, yeah,
other than The Iron's
right.
Hot?
Because I did not have, I was a pantster when I wrote Born of Sin, and I didn't have a clear ending in mind. I'm just going to go ahead and admit that. But I got to a point that I believed I could close and resolve a lot of the things that were going on in the book, but not fully. I still had a lot of things that I wanted to explore, even though I do agree that it could be a standalone book. There were things that were left unaddressed, which I believed I wanted to do a sequel for. And then the idea of a 3-part series came to me. So I have The Born of Sin, and I am nearly finished with the first draft for Born by Fire, and that's a continuation of J.D.'s story, because he leaves the Jacob behind and declares himself J.D. when he's in his mature life.
Right.
So he continues, and now that he's a grown man, he still has 3 entities that are coming after him. You have the crime people who still want him to be a part of the crime organization. You have the police investigative unit who know that he's done some horrific things, and they want him. And then the third aspect is, because he's now telling everybody that he's a minister, the religious community doesn't trust him and doesn't believe that he has the right credentials to come in and just insert himself into the religious community without any formal training. So, that's the essence of the second book, Born by Fire. And then I'm thinking, for my last iteration in the series, I haven't started to write yet, but I still have a lot of the ideas in my head. The last book is called The Last Born.
Oh, okay. Well, that's very... Now, the J.D., you said you were a pantster.
Yes.
I love that term.
I was, not anymore.
Did J.D. take over? Because I know writers often talk about sometimes the characters that you create, they
Yes.
really come to life and take the story where who they are takes it.
He, in a sense, he made me fall in love with him, because I initially had him pegged as a more evil, more darker person. And
So you like the bad boys.
I do. He does. But as we grow and mature, we learn that leave the bad boys behind and go with the good guys. But he evolved, and I saw so much good in him He brought that out and let me see that. So the character took a whole nother turn that I didn't expect. But he was always the prevalent character. His parents' story took over, and I was surprised how much they inserted themselves into my book. And that was one of the problems with the first draft that I wrote so many years ago. It was heavy on his parents, and it wasn't supposed to be their story. It was Jacob's story.
And did that change a lot?
It did. When I restarted the book in 2009, I had to take out a lot of the characters, which is something that amateur writers do. They fill the book with characters, and there are too many. So I had to cut my darlings, kill my darlings, and only keep the essentials who mattered to the story. So, but his parents remained. He, of course, was still the central theme, central character.
Well, the other thing I think will help all the writers here in Bowie, and sitting right here in this chair, why did you self-publish it?
Self-publishing is beneficial in three ways for me. First of all, you get to control your own timeline, because with a traditional publisher, if you're lucky enough to get an agent, and I don't knock traditional publishing, but it just wasn't right for me, it can take upwards of a year to 18 months from the time you finish your book to actually see it on the stands. But whereas with self-publishing, you can have your book as long as it's edited, and you must get a professional editor, but as long as you do that and have your cover, you can upload your book, and it could be for sale on Amazon within 48 hours.
Okay,
so that was
they're
one
asking
thing.
me to be Tupac here, and I'm going to have to wrap things up.
Okay. And the second reason is just to the royalties, you are able to control a lot more of your income by self-publishing.
So the process of publishing isn't different. You just have more control of it.
And I enjoy the creative control of the self-publishing.
Okay, well, we've had a wonderful 20 minutes here or so with Pamela Hart Vines. We've heard about Born of Sin. You can find it on Amazon. And I hope you're here the next time, because we're planning to have some self-publishing experts with us. So that novel you have sitting in the drawer, you could be next on the Books. We're done.